Margriet. To come back on your point and the office, Margriet, you're much younger than me. Since I have an old-fashioned office with, I'm afraid, a lot of paperwork on it, and I remember you telling somebody else about the very old-fashioned guys who have that, because you are paperless, yes. I know. So maybe this is a good introduction of myself. I'm very glad I'm here, I must say, because I've experienced the first day as a real turnover for me, because everything I thought has been put upside down for me, and I need that. Every year, at least once, people have to tell me I don't know. So everything I'm going to tell is my own vision, which is worthless since I've heard so much better things yesterday. I'm a very practical guy, that's also so I will tell you about my work. And I was very much into the title of this symposium, which is about size. And I came up with this title, which is also going to be, in fact, the idea I want to share with you, that one size fits not all. So my job is now in Berlin. I've been for a very long time director. Careful, because there's a device there. Yes. I've been director in Amsterdam, in the Amsterdam Museum, and I will show you a little bit of that because it's my real experience. 1 year of Berlin is not nearly enough to tell about any success or result. That all comes from Amsterdam, but I have to work in a double function in Berlin, which is on that slide, but I'll read it out because it's also maybe a little bit enlightening, or even not that, because it says that I have two jobs. I'm director of the Stiftung Stadtmuseum Berlin, which is a group of museums I will show you, and I'm chief curator for the country of Berlin for the exhibition in the so-called Rumpel Forum. Now this is on my card, on my business card, so before people understand what I do, I have to talk about it a while, and I'll explain it to you now. Now, this is a map of the center of Berlin, and the center of Berlin has been ruined in the Second World War. There are a few buildings left, and of those buildings I am, so to say, a director of a group of historical museums. The centerpiece really is not really center, that's the Märkisches Museum. I'll tell you a little bit about it later. Really central is the so-called Nikolaikirche, which is the oldest church in town. Nearby is an exhibition building, it's called the Evenpalais. On the other side of the road we have a period house, which is the Knobloch House, and outside this picture, very deep down southwest, we have another museum, which is in fact a sort of reenactment village on the Middle Ages. So it's all sorts, and this is the central building, and I show it in an old picture because it's a very romantic building, and it doesn't look romantic at the moment. It's called the Märkisches Museum, and it's in a bad state, but if anything, Germany is very much into culture, and they spend a lot of money, and they've promised us 65 million euros to restore the building in a sort of state, as you can see it here in the old picture, and another building on the other side of the road, which is called the Marine House, to be restored. This is a wonderful building, and nobody experiences it. If you ask a Berlin citizen, what is the Märkisches Museum? Good chance she or he will say, I don't know, because it's a hidden gem. It's an unknown gem. It's the first city museum ever to be built as a city museum. So there are a lot of city museums a little bit older, but they're in old abbeys or in city or in the central house. What do you call that? The city hall, or they are in something old which has been changed into a city museum. But this is actually meant to be the history museum of the region. The region is Brandenburg. Brandenburg is not a province, but a mark, a Märkisch, is the genitive of Mark. So that's the reason why it's called Märkisch. We can't work with this because this is the museum on the history of Berlin. Nobody knows it. So we're going to change the name when we have renovated this building into the Berlin Museum. How about that? But it's a lovely building, and I really love tradition, so I find it also difficult to change the name. Here you see a floor plan. What is actually meant by the architect, who was the city architect, Hofmann, in around 1900. It's been opened in 1907, and that's in fact a very modern building. It's a walk through the history, the architectural history of Brandenburg, with a big hall which resembles a sort of knight's hall in a castle, with a cloister or abbey, with an old palace, and with a big more modern palace. So it is actually a walk through the times in a labyrinth, so nobody finds his way or her way in this building. But I'm very used to that because it wasn't different in the Amsterdam Museum, which is also a labyrinth. I will show you a bit. But it's in fact a lovely building. These pictures are much better than the actual situation when you're there. You will be disappointed. But there are a few fine pieces. This is, for instance, the portrait of Rathenau by Munch. We've got Kirchner's, and we've got other important paintings from the Roaring Twenties. So there are good pieces of art. I'm going to tell a little bit more about the collection, but before I do, I wanted to show you the exhibition palace we have. It's called the Evelyn Palais. Right now there is an exhibition on the old castle that's rebuilt. They're rebuilding in the city. It's a beautiful building, as you can see also on the staircase hall. You can make beautiful exhibitions there. On the other side of the road is a period-style house, which is part of our group. It's called Museum Knoblauch House, with a Biedermeier interior. And then there is the old church, the Nikolai Church, which has a restored but very beautiful interior. And the interesting thing is, as you can see, there are chairs there, but there is no church community. So the chairs are there for the one or few events that take place there per month. This is the place where we are going to make big, yes, scale, installations from artists. First is going to happen this year. Because of the Luther year, we are commemorating Luther. Chihiro Shiota will make out of this church a wonderful installation called Flying Scriptures. So from September onwards, this church will be in use to comment with modern artists on the importance of the building, of its function, of its former function. It also used to be, for a while, a political building. The Houses of Parliament were first installed here. So it's a meaningful building. It's in the center of Berlin, but nobody from Berlin comes there because it has nothing really good on offer. This is very well visited, and it's in fact a reproduction. This is the archaeological village, the reenactment village. I will show you an even better picture. Where the families of Berlin and surroundings come, and it's called Museum Village Düppel. It is only seasonal, and in the weekends in the season, and when it does anything in a weekend, 5,000 people come. And it's all these kind of ex-hippies from 1975 that used to love new archaeology, experimental archaeology, who are inhabiting, so to say, at day, these houses, and making demonstrations of old crafts. And it's the place that they expected me to get rid of, because it's off-center, it's amateuresque, so to say. And I was there, and I think this is wonderful. This is exactly the opposite of what we're doing in the center, which is numbers. I suppose I will explain you why we're talking about numbers. But the numbers are all right. The good thing is this is on what it's all about, I think, on material, on craft. And children learn here that in the Middle Ages people were very intelligent. They knew anything there was to know about everything, because they made their own houses, they made their own food, they made their own textiles and clothing. And what can we do? We can do one thing. We are totally specialized. And we lost contact with the whole. So there is a very interesting deal with these people, and it's a wonderful place. Everybody loves it when they come. So it's going to be part as a total opposite of this. This is the second job I have to do. This is the reconstruction of the palace in the middle of Berlin, on the museum island. It's called the Schloss, for the people who are used to the old name, but it's going to be the so-called Humboldt Forum. And the Humboldt Forum wants to explain the world. You can see the museums of the museum island are at the back of this picture, and this is a huge project. It's the biggest cultural project of the moment in Germany. There's a lot of criticism on the rebuilding of this thing, and it's going to look like this. So on three sides it's going to be a Baroque reconstruction on the outside. On one side it's going to be completely pre-modern, I say. It's like Eur in Rome. There's an Italian architect, Franco Costello, who is in charge of the reconstruction and the modern side. And on the inside it's going to be a complete modern museum building with a few inhabitants, and not just what it's known for as a new house for the ethnological museum of the big Prussian art collections, and the Asian Museum, the Museum of Asian Art. No, also the city, the land of Berlin, has financed part of this museum building, and they will have 4,500 square meters for an exhibition. And I have to make the first exhibition. After the exhibition is ready, and this building, or this part of the building, will be part of the collection of museums we have, and we can go on making exhibitions on this floor. Now this is going to be visited by masses, because this is the museum island. Partly it's going to be free, as is wished for by my colleague in this building, which is Neil McGregor, the former director of the British Museum, who is now the Gründungsintendant, which is meaning the initial, the founding intendant, which is strange because this building has been founded a while ago, and he stepped in recently, together with me, and we have to see a way to make the content relevant. Because what happened is that the two museums I mentioned, the Ethnological Museum, the Museum for Asian Art, were far out, just like the Museum Dorf Düppel in Dahlem, and lost their amount of visitors they were used to have in the 70s and 80s, when the wall was still standing. And when this building was firstly decided upon that it should be there, and then people started to think, what are we going to do with it? Then the director of the Ethnological Museum put up his hand and said, can I have it? Well, he could for 2 stories, for the 2nd and 3rd floor. And there the Ethnological Museum is going to be, and it's all settled. And then the idea was that the Berlin department was not going to be a museum or an exhibition, but a library. So I, because of a new decision that there's going to be an exhibition, I'm going to work with a library climate and a library interior, so to say, which I have to take out again and make a proper exhibition out of it. But if we do, suddenly the museum, the city museum, will have millions of visitors. That is the expectation. Mostly tourists, although they want me to make this for everybody. So also for the Berlin people. Suddenly, the City Museum of Berlin, in the future, will make a jump from small to huge. And I haven't got the staff for that. The staff is not so small, but there's another reason for that. But it's not able to make big shows. It's not the normal thing they do. So I don't do this with my museum staff. I do it with a production company called Kunstprojekte Berlin, who are doing great projects in Berlin, which is a very interesting situation, but the cooperation is great. Neil McGregor has changed this part. This was going to be a library too, on ethnological books, and he wants it to be an educational department for the